When you head out into the wilderness, you're usually looking for, well, a refuge, right? A break from all the noise and chaos of everyday life. We picture the quiet campsite, maybe a starry night, that restorative silence. But the sources we've looked at tonight, they show us something different. Sometimes nature doesn't offer peace. It offers isolation. And that isolation, it can be a terrifying weapon. Tonight, we're doing a deep dive into 6 true accounts of wilderness terror. These are stories submitted by the people who lived through them, detailing really close calls with everything from like stalkers and calculated human evil, all the way to moments of just absolute desperate survival against nature itself.
Yeah, and these accounts are so powerful because they basically just strip away that safety net of civilization we rely on. They expose that really thin line, between a relaxing weekend away and a genuine life or death situation. It's a stark reminder of how quickly that sense of peace can just flip into sheer panic when, well, help is 20 miles down a dirt road.
Exactly. So let's unpack these experiences. They are chilling. We're starting with the kind of menace that often goes unseen, the human shadow lurking just out of sight. Our first story involves a volunteer search and rescue canine handler. He was doing night training in these really dense, steep woods up in Washington State. He was with his specialized dog, Brody, who's trained in human remains detection. So the handler thought this was just, routine training. But then Brody suddenly alerts on a scent. So our policy says you have to follow the dog's lead, right? So he follows Brody down this dark, really treacherous slope, and then he loses his footing, takes just an awful fall, breaks 2 ribs, hits his head hard on a rock, loses his flashlight, and crucially, the dog's leash slips from his hand. Which is just about the worst case scenario right there. Injured, dark, and separated from his dog. Right. He's in immense pain, but he manages to hit the emergency alert on his GPS unit. Then he's just lying there calling out for Brody. Moments later, he hears footsteps coming closer, and he feels this surge of relief. He assumes it's another SAR volunteer responding to his alert.
Naturally. That's what you'd expect.
But when this man appears, he doesn't offer help. Not at all. Instead, he starts delivering this really bizarre, chilling monologue to the handler who's lying there, badly injured, totally helpless. The man talks about the dry creek bed where the handler fell. He details how, supposedly, dozens of people fall there, get stuck and drowned during the rainy seasons. He kept saying people die here every year.
Wow. Okay, so what's fascinating and deeply disturbing there is the strategy of the menace, right? It wasn't like an overt, I'm going to hurt you threat. It was this threat disguised as some kind of grim warning about the place itself. And the handler picked up on that. He realized the man's tone suggested these deaths weren't accidents at all. Like this guy knew about it, maybe was even involved. That immediate psychological terror combined with being completely physically helpless, that's a very specific kind of nightmare.
And think about this, when the rescuers finally got there, one of the first things they asked him was, were you pushed?
Right. That tells you everything.
It shows this place had a reputation, doesn't it? A sinister one.
It absolutely does. The fact that rescuers immediately considered foul play, it just validates the handler's terror. And the fact that the whole SAR team later moved their annual retreat location because of multiple reports of this creaky, shadowy stranger, it shows this wasn't just one bad night. This guy was maybe a known issue, thriving in that isolation.
So how did the handler get out of it? It wasn't just luck, was it?
No, it sounds like it wasn't luck at all.
No. His life was probably saved by Brody, his dog. Brody's part, Australian Shepherd, apparently incredibly vocal, makes these unique, loud sounds. The handler described them as "ihs" and trills. So just as the handler's terror is peaking and he's trying to maybe reach for a light or something, Brody's distinctive calls sound closer. The moment that stranger heard that loud, unique dog sound, he stopped talking, mid-sentence, and just made a, quote, hasty retreat back into the darkness.
Wow, that specific sound changed the whole dynamic instantly. The dog became the deterrent.
A perfect example of, maybe, instinctual defense. Okay, our second story hits a similar note, human stalking, but this time in Acadia National Park, Maine. This involved a camper on a solo trip. He'd actually gotten pretty comfortable sleeping alone out there.
Which takes some doing for a lot of people.
Totally. But on his last night, he had to step away from his tent, late at night. To be discreet, he used the tactical setting on his headlamp, just a dim blue light, hard to see from a distance. As he's walking back, maybe just a short distance, he sees it. A bright, powerful flashlight beam shining right onto his camp. his tent, his gear.
Oh man, instant adrenaline dump.
Right. He immediately clicks off his own light, ducks behind this huge tree, alarm bells just screaming in his head. He watches this beam move methodically across his campsite. Then seconds later, a second flashlight appears. Now there are two figures inspecting his camp.
Two of them. Okay, that changes things significantly.
He's too far away to hear everything they're saying, but he hears one sentence crystal clear, and it just freezes him solid. One of them says, chillingly, "He was just here now."
Okay, that takes the terror to a whole different level because it confirms intent, doesn't it? The SNR handler felt danger, maybe ambiguity. This camper knew right then he was being actively hunted. They weren't just passing by. They knew someone was there and they were looking for him. Calculating.
And then they eventually decide to leave, but not before one says, we'll just come back tomorrow.
Oh, horrible. Imagine that ticking clock starting in your head. What do you do?
Exactly. He had this awful choice. Does he run back, make noise packing up, risk them hearing him, or does he stay put, hidden? He chose to freeze, stayed hidden behind that tree until the first light of dawn. Utterly terrifying. And when he reported it later, the rangers confirmed no patrols were out that night. These guys were definitely not officials. They were predators.
You know, if we connect these first two stories, what really stands out is how isolation acts as this amplifier, right? In the wilderness, sound discipline or the lack of it becomes critical. The handler's dog used sound as a weapon. The Acadia camper nearly had his quiet approach betrayed by just needing to step away for a moment. In both cases, the darkness and the silence. That's what the human threats rely on.
The silence empowers them.
Yeah.
That brings us darkly into part two. The brutal irony of true crime striking when you're seeking absolute tranquility. We're moving from that sort of creeping, premeditated dread to sudden, immediate violence. Our next story is from a couple hiking in Patapsco State Park, Maryland, an area some might recognize from the Serial podcast connection. They were on a pretty secluded trail down near a river and some train tracks, just enjoying the day. Then they heard voices from the opposite bank.
Okay.
Suddenly, a person, clearly scared, bursts out of the bushes on the other side. They stumble, slip, get up, and scream just one plea. No, please, no. Out. 3 gunshots. Immediately after the scream, the victim falls backward into the river, dead. The whole thing, the scream, the shots, the splash happened in like seconds.
The shock factor there must be just overwhelming. You go from a peaceful hike to witnessing a murder, boom, just like that. No warning, no context. And the primal response in that situation, it isn't complex thought. It's pure biological flight. The fact that the narrator's first instinct was to shield his girlfriend, literally put his body between her and the sound of those shots. That shows how instantaneous that survival mechanism kicks in.
They just ran until they were safely across the train tracks, found cell service, called the police. But the person who submitted the story noted they never heard about the killer being caught. Imagine carrying that, seeing someone die violently, and the person responsible just vanished back into the trees.
The trauma of that is immense, and the feeling of helplessness.
Yeah. Okay, our next incident of brutal irony took place much further away. Wonnangatta Valley, Australia. This was back in March 2020. A couple heads out like 4 hours from Melbourne, planning a fun camping trip. They were actually listening to true crime stories on the drive up, kind of joking about scary stuff.
The irony is already setting in.
Right. They arrive at their intended area and find this shocking scene. A burned out utility vehicle, the charred remains of a tent, everything destroyed very recently. You could probably still smell the smoke. They assumed it was a terrible accident, maybe involving an elderly couple known to camp there. They saw another young couple nearby who had already called the authorities, so feeling like it was handled, they just carried on with their hike, not grasping the true horror they'd just stumbled upon.
And that assumption of an accident, that's a key psychological defense, isn't it? The brain tries to rationalize horrific things, especially in a setting you associate with peace.
But then, 18 months later, they found out the truth. The elderly couple who owned that campsite, they weren't killed in an accidental fire. They had been brutally murdered. The killer had deliberately burned the entire camp, including the victims' bodies, specifically to destroy all the evidence.
That is just chilling. It's a perfect example of calculated human evil meeting total isolation. The fire wasn't just, part of the crime. It was the cleanup. That speaks to an incredible level of cold-bloodedness.
And maybe the most disturbing detail of all. The double homicide happened less than 24 hours before this couple arrived on the scene. They were unknowingly camping right next to where 2 people had been murdered and incinerated just the day before.
Unbelievable.
And the motive, get this, an argument that started over drone.
A drone. Seriously.
Apparently.
Yeah.
A simple argument about a drone escalated to murder, followed by the complete destruction of the scene.
That just perfectly highlights the brutal irony, doesn't it? People go to the wilderness to escape petty modern conflicts, and these poor people were killed over a flying gadget. It really shows how violence, when it's concentrated and unchecked by witnesses out there, can just explode from the most mundane, trivial beginning.
Absolutely terrifying. Okay, for our final segment, let's shift gears slightly. Let's turn to survival stories against the raw, unpredictable fury of nature itself.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the menace isn't human at all. Back in 2012, a solo camper in West Virginia found himself caught in one of those insane summer windstorms known as a derecho. For anyone unfamiliar, derecho is basically, well, it's like a land hurricane, a widespread, long-lasting windstorm with gusts easily strong enough to rip huge trees right out of the ground.
Yeah, incredibly dangerous storms, not something you want to be caught outdoors in.
Definitely not. Fearing being crushed by falling trees, the camper found what seemed like the only sanctuary. A single-walled concrete pavilion. Basic, but solid. But about an hour before sundown, he realized he wasn't the only creature desperately seeking shelter from these howling, 60-mile-per-hour winds.
Yeah.
A massive black bear, equally terrified by the storm, showed up at the same pavilion.
Oh, wonderful. Out of the frying pan into the bear's den, potentially.
Pretty much. The bear saw the camper, backed off at first, but then it started circling the pavilion. Round and round, getting closer with each pass. The camper said it was clearly weighing up whether I was worth fighting or not for the shelter. And he knew. He absolutely knew. He couldn't run back out into the storm where trees were actively crashing down all around him.
I mean, that is the ultimate survival dilemma, isn't it? You're trapped. Trapped between the overwhelming random force of nature outside the very real risk of being instantly killed by a falling tree, which is almost a certainty in a derecho, and the immediate focused, lethal threat of a terrified, potentially aggressive bear inside. His decision to stay put, it meant he was making a calculated risk. He was betting on his ability to maybe deter or fight the bear, rather than risking the indiscriminate destruction of the storm.
So what did he do? What was his defense plan?
Yeah, what could he do?
He grabbed his backpack. It was still heavy with gear. His plan was to use it as a makeshift shield, maybe even a battering ram if it came to it. As the bear came around for what seemed like its final approach, the sight of the camper, suddenly looking bigger and different holding this large pack, was apparently just enough to deter the already freaked out animal. It roared, ran off into the storm, and the camper survived this sleepless, absolutely terrifying night. He chose the bear risk over the tree risk, and somehow it worked.
Incredible presence of mind in an impossible situation.
Truly. Okay, our final story involves a horrific accident and then this adrenaline-fueled rescue down in Arkansas. Couple's just enjoying a summer camping trip.
I know, Mama.
And then they hear loud yelling. They run towards the sound and find a man who had tripped while holding a knife.
Oh, no!
Yeah, resulting in this huge, gushing gash right across his stomach, just pouring blood.
Oh, that's bad. Really bad out there.
Exactly. No cell service. The nearest hospital is 20 miles away. Time is obviously critical. They make the immediate, terrifying decision.
Mm-hmm.
They have to transport him themselves.
Right
now, in the back of his own truck.
You gotta do what you gotta do.
Now, here is the unbelievable twist in this. The narrator, the woman who submitted the story, she was a drive. But she suffers from extreme syncope.
Syncope, fainting.
Yes, she faints instantly at the sight of blood, immediately passes out. But she had absolutely no choice. She had to get behind the wheel while her boyfriend climbed into the truck bed with the victim, applying critical pressure to this horrific open wound.
Wow. That's an incredible demonstration of adrenaline, just completely overriding basic biology. Her body's natural defense is literally to shut down when faced with blood, yet the absolute urgency of saving this man's life pushed her through. A 12-minute high-speed drive where she somehow had to block out the knowledge of what was happening just, feet behind her head in that truck bed.
They made it. Got to the hospital just as the victim was starting to lose consciousness, his words slurring. But he survived. And the couple later got this incredibly emotional thank you from his brother. Just a horrific accident turned into this defining, humbling rescue that really relied entirely on raw instinct, adrenaline, and speed.
What a story. A testament to what people can do when pushed to the absolute limit.
Yeah. These sources, taken together, they really show the whole spectrum of danger out there, don't they? From calculated human malice and stalking to just freak accidents, desperate animals, sudden violence, the peace and quiet you go looking for in the wilderness. It can just shatter in an instant.
And if we connect this all back to that initial idea, that promise of escape, I think the takeaway is pretty sobering, actually. Perhaps the most frightening thing is realizing that the very isolation you seek is often the exact thing that enables tragedy to happen. When violence, whether it's human or natural, strikes out there in the wild, you are almost entirely reliant on your own split-second decisions, your own resilience. There's often no backup coming quickly.
A very sobering thought indeed. Thank you for joining us for this chilling deep dive into true wilderness terror. If you appreciate these true stories of horror and survival, please do remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel Horror Docx. Good night, and please stay safe out there.